What if the reason you do not create like everyone else is because God never called you to? Maybe you've been trying to fit your ideas into rooms, trends, and patterns that were never designed for the oil on your life. But what if being different was not a flaw? What if different was actually part of the assignment? My name is Marisol, and welcome to Grow Daily, where we talk about faith, purpose, obedience, and becoming who God called you to be. In today's video, I'm sharing 7 signs God called you to create different. And we're not doing this for attention or comparison, but for obedience, impact, and the people attached to your assignment. Because different is not always rebellion. Sometimes different is evidence that God is doing something new through you. So let's talk about the 7 signs. Sign number 1, your desires started shifting and you couldn't go back. You see, preparation doesn't start with a strategy because it actually starts with God, drawing you closer and changing what you want. You notice you don't want to live the way you used to live anymore. And those old patterns you can't relate to now. But that's not because you're becoming boring. As you abide in Him, He places His desires in your heart. Isaiah 43:1 says it plainly. I have called you by name. You are mine. The calling begins with belonging instead of doing. So think about Moses spending 40 years in the wilderness before the burning bush. And remember that God was preparing him in obscurity by stripping Egypt's way of building out of him so he could lead God's way. That's what's happening to you right now. This shift can feel disorienting because the ambition that used to drive you now feel misaligned. But you're not losing motivation. You're gaining discernment. And if you felt this pull towards more prayer, more stillness, and more of His word, that's not you being lazy. That's called preparation. God is making room for something new by emptying you of what you used to chase. Sign number 2, the standard hustle culture makes you physically ill or spiritually drained. When you try to copy those proven strategies and that constant push for results, something deep inside you starts to resist it. And that feeling is actually discernment. Because performance mode keeps telling you to do more, move faster, and optimize every second of your day. But your spirit is saying, this isn't how we build. And David understood this struggle perfectly. Before he ever faced Goliath, King Saul tried to force his own heavy armor onto him. Everyone around him expected David to wear what a standard warrior would wear. But the gear simply didn't fit his frame. It felt heavy and wrong for how God has specifically made him to fight. So David chose to go with what God had already trained his hands to use. And that refusal to conform wasn't about arrogance. It was an act of obedience. The world's pace demands constant output without any time for abiding. But you were designed to create from a place of communion rather than exhaustion. And this is where many of you start wondering if something is wrong. Something is wrong with your work ethic or your drive, but nothing is wrong with you. You're just not built for that specific yoke. Jesus said His yoke is easy and His burden is light. So if the way that you're building is currently crushing you, it is not His way. The drain you feel isn't a sign to quit your calling. It is a sign that you have been wearing armor that was never yours to carry in the first place. Sign number 3, you carry a vision that doesn't make sense to others. And honestly, it scares you too. The vision God gave you feels too big and too different. And when you try to explain it to people, they just tilt their heads in confusion like, okay, you got it. Even the people who love you most don't quite get what you're trying to do. And it doesn't fit into any neat category because it's not just a business and it's not just a ministry in a traditional sense. That ambiguity unsettles everyone around you. And if you're being honest, it unsettles you too. You have probably doubted whether you can actually pull this off because it requires resources and the strength you don't yet have in yourself. But Noah, he understood this feeling completely when he was building a massive ark in a world where rain didn't even exist yet. His obedience looked irrational to everyone watching him work, but he feared God more than he feared looking foolish to his neighbors. The first letter of Peter gives us a framework by saying that as each one has received a special gift, we should employ it in serving one another. The gift is almost always given before the platform, before the clarity, and long before anyone else understands the plan. And that is the constant pattern. God deposits the vision first, and then he builds the capacity within you to handle it. The fact that this vision is unsettling to you might be the very evidence that God gave it to you. If you could accomplish it all on your own, you wouldn't need him. And needing him is exactly where he wants you. Sign number 4. God keeps closing traditional doors to force you into a new space. You've tried taking the expected route by sending out applications and chasing partnerships that looked perfect on paper. Yet every one of those opportunities kept falling through. It felt like rejection at first, and you probably wondered if you did something wrong or if you simply heard God incorrectly. And now that you're starting to see the pattern, it is shifting how you interpret every closed door in your life. So take a deep breath and look at what Paul experienced in the book of Acts. He tried to enter Asia to preach the gospel, but the Spirit repeatedly stopped him from moving forward in that direction. Paul had a logical plan that made perfect sense for an apostle, but God kept saying no because that closed door was actually a form of guidance. This redirection led him straight to Macedonia, where the harvest was finally ready for him. If Paul had forced his way into Asia against those warnings, he would have missed a specific assignment that carried eternal weight. God will often close the things you would have settled for, so you have no choice but to walk through what he actually assigned to you. You have to realize this. And it's not rejection, but it's actually God's protection over your future. In Exodus 31, we see that God called Bezalel by name and filled him with the Spirit along with the skill and intelligence needed for every craft. Bezalel did not have to audition for this role or apply for the position because he was already appointed for it. The doors that opened for him were specific to the gifts God placed inside him, and the doors that closed kept him from building anything less than the tabernacle. These closed doors are not rejection letters, but they are guardrails, keeping you on the narrow path God has set before you. When you stop fighting against them, you finally start seeing the one door that was always open, which is the one you would have missed if you would have gotten your way or thought that you wanted that more than anything else. But trust the process and know that God's timing is perfect. Sign number 5. You can't just create for the sake of creating. It has to carry meaning and impact. You can't just create for the sake of creating. It has to carry meaning and impact. Producing content or launching new projects just to keep an algorithm happy or stay visible has started to feel completely empty to you. Other people seem fine posting whatever is trending and moving on, but you find that you just cannot do that anymore. Something deep inside you needs every brick you lay to carry real weight and purpose. So let's talk about purposeful creating. Because you feel that every piece you put out has to serve the people God gave you while honoring the one who called you. This feeling is not just about being perfect, but it is actually a sign that you're practicing true stewardship over your gifts. And when we look at Bezalel, which I never could say his name, we see he was not making art just for the sake of art. Every thread and every carving in the tabernacle was designed for God's dwelling place. Meaning his skill had a sacred purpose. The same hands that build can easily build in vain if the foundation is not built on obedience. And Bezalel did not just wake up and decide what felt creative that day, but he built according to the pattern God showed Moses on the mountain. The blueprint always came first and the building followed. Hebrews 11 says Abraham looked forward to the city whose builder and maker is God. So he wasn't just constructing things for temporary approval. When you know who the real builder is, you stop needing every project to validate your worth. You're not here to replicate what has already been done, but you are here to build what God showed you in the secret place. And this is exactly why copy and trends feel so hollow to you lately. You were not given someone else's plan, but you were given your own unique assignment. The people who need what you're building will not find it anywhere else because no one else was assigned to build it but you. So show up with intention and finish what you start, one brick at a time. Sign number 6, you crave alignment and you're finally okay with saying no. There was a time when you said yes just to please other people, or maybe you said yes to feed your own ego and make it look like you were actually moving. Now, that way of living feels unbearable and you're starting to decline opportunities and partnerships that don't align with your values, even when they look great on paper. And you're finally okay with walking away, even when the people around you don't understand why you're leaving a good thing behind. This shift is a sign of true maturity because you finally understand that there's a greater purpose for your life and you're no longer willing to trade alignment for visibility. The old version of you needed every door to feel validated, but the version God is forming right now knows that one aligned step outweighs 10 misaligned opportunities. So just take a deep breath and realize that you don't have to be everywhere at once to be successful in God's eyes. Jesus modeled this perfectly in John chapter 6 when the crowd wanted to make him king by force. After he fed the 5,000, they were offering him massive influence, a platform, and a position of power, but he chose to withdraw and walk away from what looked like a huge success. He knew his purpose wasn't to accept every opportunity that came his way, but rather to obey the Father's specific plan for his life. And if Jesus could say no to a throne that wasn't in God's timing, you can certainly say no to a partnership that isn't your assignment. 1 Peter 4 tells us whoever serves should do so by the strength which God supplies, which means you aren't supposed to be drawing from your own limited reservoir. You have permission to say no to anything God isn't supplying the strength for, because if the peace isn't there, the provision usually isn't there either. Saying no isn't a sign of arrogance, but rather it's good stewardship of the specific assignment you carry. You're not rejecting people when you set boundaries. You're simply protecting the thing God put in your hands. Sign number 7, you recognize this isn't just business, ministry, or a career move. It's an assignment from God. The language of a side hustle or a passion project just doesn't sit right with you anymore because what you're building feels much heavier and weightier than a simple hobby. And you realize you're not just creating a platform for yourself, but you're actually stewarding a calling. And that realization changes how you show up and how you pray. So let's talk about how this shift and perspective changes your entire strategy for the future. Because Esther, she understood this kind of weight when she was living in the palace with all the position, the favor, and the provision she could ever want. When the moment of crisis came, she recognized she wasn't just a queen enjoying her privileges, but she was placed there for such a time as this. And her assignment had eternal stakes where lives depended on her obedience. And she had to decide if she would risk everything to step into her purpose or play it safe. And your assignment might not look as dramatic as saving a nation like Esther's did, but the weight of your obedience is exactly the same. God placed you exactly where you are with the specific gifts you carry for a reason that goes far beyond your personal success or comfort. 1 Peter 4 reminds us that the goal of everything we do is so that God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. When you stop feasting your eyes on the world and focus on His glory, it reframes every decision you make. When you finally see your work as an assignment, the pressure of performance mode starts to shift off of your shoulders. You're not performing for an audience anymore, but you're obeying a God who already equipped you with everything you need before He ever gives you a platform. He gave you the vision before He gave you the full clarity, and He will continue to give you the strength as you take the next step. And this is where the Mantle Method comes in to help you identify the specific God-given mantle you carry, so you can stop comparing yourself to others. You can stop shrinking back and you can start to build with God with total clarity. Because when you truly know what you're carrying, you finally stop trying to carry what's never yours to begin with. Show up with intention today and remember that you only need to lay one brick at a time. I say this in every video, but it's so true. So now you have the 7 signs that confirm what you have probably sensed for a long time. God called you to create different, and the way you build won't look like everyone else because your assignment is unique to you. The closed doors and that craving for alignment were never random events, but were actually part of your formation. For a practical next step, take the Mantle Method quiz to get clear on the specific mantle God placed on your life for this season. And when you finally know what you're carrying, you can stop trying to carry what was never yours to begin with. You're not behind and you're not broken. You're called. And the way forward is simple obedience. Build with God instead of for approval, and watch what He does with your yes. So that's all I have for you today, and I hope this serves you well. Thank you.
Grow.